Meet John Smith, a man whose bitterness was as solid as the skyscrapers surrounding him. For 20 years, he lived trapped in a colorless routine, pushing everyone away. But on a rainy afternoon, an unexpected encounter with a lost foreigner triggered a series of events that no one could have predicted. From a suspension at work to a surprising promotion, John's journey is a roller coaster of emotions and discoveries. What happens when compassion breaks through the barriers of indifference? How can a simple act of kindness transform not just one life, but an entire community? Get ready for a story that will touch your heart and make you rethink the power of your own actions. Watch now and discover how you too can be the catalyst for an extraordinary transformation. But before we tell this inspiring story, I want to extend a special invitation to you. Subscribe now to the channel and hit the bell icon to receive notifications. This is very important for the channel's growth and will ensure you're notified about new videos. Now that you've subscribed to the channel, I want to give you a very special tip. Have you ever thought about earning income from your home in dollars? Click the link in the description and see how you can do this. Now, let's get to today's video. The transformation of John Smith in a bustling metropolis, where glass and steel skyscrapers competed for space on the horizon and the incessant noise of traffic formed the soundtrack of urban life, lived John Smith, a 55-year-old man whose bitterness was as palpable as the concrete that surrounded him. John had been working for exactly 20 years and 3 months at Global Logistics, a renowned company in the international transport industry. His face, once youthful and full of hope, now bore the deep marks of time and disillusionment. His blue eyes, once bright and curious, now reflected only the emptiness of a tired soul disenchanted with life. On the 15th floor of the corporate building, John was a well-known figure, but not necessarily well-liked. His efficiency was legendary. No one could organize an international shipment as quickly as he could, but his coldness was equally notorious. Colleagues avoided his cubicle as if it were a danger zone, fearing his acidic humor and cutting comments. "Good morning, John," Sarah, a new intern, once risked. "What's good about it?" he responded dryly, without taking his eyes off the computer screen. Sarah never tried to start a conversation again. Over the years, John had built an impenetrable fortress around himself, as solid and cold as the concrete walls of the building where he worked. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, when the gray skies seemed to mirror John's mood, something unusual happened. The elevator doors opened, and a man entered the office. He was visibly lost and confused, looking around with an expression of helplessness. His English was broken, and he held a crumpled paper with an address scribbled in almost illegible handwriting. "Please, help," said the foreigner, his dark eyes pleading for compassion. "I look for place, how you say, shelter?" John's colleagues suddenly became very busy. Some pretended to type furiously, others picked up their phones, simulating important calls. No one wanted to make eye contact with the lost man. But something about that foreigner, perhaps the vulnerability in his eyes, or the tremor in his voice, awakened an almost forgotten spark in John's hardened heart. It was as if a distant memory of who he used to be was trying to emerge. Against all his instincts, John stood up. His chair creaked, breaking the tense silence of the office. "I can help," he said, surprising himself and everyone around him. The foreigner smiled, relieved. "Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much." John approached and examined the paper. "You're looking for New Horizons shelter," he said, recognizing the address. "It's on the other side of the city." The man nodded, looking even more lost. "I don't know city. Don't know how to go." John hesitated for a moment. He had a pile of work to finish, reports to send, emails to answer. But something inside him, a voice he hadn't heard in years, compelled him to act. "I'll take you there," John announced, grabbing his coat. A murmur of surprise ran through the office. Sarah, the intern, dropped her pen in shock. "But, John," began Mike, his department colleague, "what about the report for the German client?" John shrugged. "It can wait until tomorrow," he replied, surprising himself with the calmness in his voice. In the elevator, the foreigner introduced himself. "My name is Yuki," he said, bowing slightly. "I am very grateful for your help." During the crowded subway ride, Yuki shared his story. He had left his wife and 2 young children in Japan, traveling halfway around the world in search of a better life for his family. In Japan, I lost my job, Yuki explained, his eyes filling with tears. Company closed. Many does. I came here to work, send money home. For the first time in years, John felt something awaken inside him, empathy. He found himself thinking about his own family, about the dreams he had when he was younger. It must have been hard to leave your family, John commented softly. Yuki nodded. Very hard, but necessary. For them, I'd do anything. When they finally arrived at the shelter, a simple but welcoming building, Yuki turned to John with a genuine smile. You are a good man, Mr. John. May the gods bless you. John felt a lump in his throat. It had been so long since someone had seen him as a good person. Was he still one? Upon returning to the office, almost 2 hours later, John was immediately called to the director's office, Richard Parker. His act of kindness did not go unnoticed, but not in the way he expected. You abandoned your post for hours, John, Richard thundered, his face red with anger. You left clients waiting, delayed deliveries. This is unacceptable. John tried to explain. Sir, it was an emergency. The man was lost, didn't speak the language. Richard interrupted him with a brusque gesture. I don't care. Your obligation is to this company. I'm putting you on unpaid suspension for a week. Go home and reflect on your priorities. The injustice of the situation hit John like a punch. But, surprisingly, he didn't feel angry. For the first time in a long time, he felt he had done the right thing, regardless of the consequences. During his suspension, John had time to reflect on his life. Sitting in his small apartment, he unearthed an old photo album. There he was, 20 years younger, smiling alongside college classmates. When did that idealistic young man, full of dreams and compassion, turn into the bitter man he had become? He decided to use this time to reconnect with his essence. He walked through the city as he hadn't done in years, really observing the people around him. He smiled at strangers in the park, helped an elderly lady cross the street, chatted with the newsstand owner he always ignored. Slowly, the shell of bitterness that enveloped him began to crack. On the last day of his suspension, John received an unexpected call. It was Yuki. Mr. John, said the excited voice on the other end of the line, I need you to come to the shelter. It's important. Intrigued and a little apprehensive, John went there. Upon arrival, he was greeted by a surprising scene. Dozens of immigrants were gathered in the shelter's courtyard, all smiling at him. Yuki approached, his eyes shining. Mr. John, I told everyone about your kindness. Many here have lost faith in humanity, but you reminded us that good people still exist. One by one, the immigrants approached to share their stories. A woman from Syria told how a stranger helped her find a doctor for her sick child. A man from Nigeria spoke about a volunteer teacher who was teaching him English. Each story was a testimony to the power of small acts of kindness. John felt tears in his eyes, something that hadn't happened in years. I don't know what to say, he stammered, emotional. You don't need to say anything, Yuki replied. Just keep being who you really are. Inspired by this experience, John decided it was time for a change. When he returned to work the following Monday, his colleagues noticed something different. He smiled as he entered the office, greeted everyone by name. Good morning, Sarah, he said to the intern, who almost spilled her coffee in surprise. His efficiency at work remained, but now it was tempered with compassion. When a colleague made a mistake, instead of criticizing, John offered help. He began organizing team lunches, encouraging collaboration and team spirit. Gradually, the office, once cold and tense, became a more welcoming place. Productivity increased, and the work environment visibly improved. John didn't stop there. He proposed to the board a social responsibility program where employees could use a few hours of work per month to do volunteer work. To his surprise, the idea was well received. It's an excellent initiative, John, said Richard, the same director who had suspended him. It will improve our corporate image and employee morale. Months passed, and the impact of the changes initiated by John was felt not only in the work environment but in the surrounding community. The company began to be recognized for its social actions, attracting new clients and talents. In a general meeting, Richard made a surprising announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to announce that we are creating a new position, Director of Social Responsibility. And the person chosen to occupy it is John Smith. The room erupted in applause. John, emotional, could hardly believe it. His journey of redemption had not only transformed his life but positively impacted the lives of many others. "Thank you," he said into the microphone, his voice choked. This proves that it's never too late to change, to make a difference. Each of us has this power. John Smith, once a bitter man, became a symbol of transformation and hope. His story reminds us that it's never too late to change, to rediscover our humanity, and to make a difference in the world. He learned that true strength lies not in indifference, but in the courage to care. And that sometimes, a simple act of kindness can trigger a wave of positive changes, not only in our own lives but in the lives of those around us. The lesson John leaves us is clear: never underestimate the power of an act of compassion, for in it lies the seed of personal transformation and social change. You, who have watched this far, what did you think of this story? Did it inspire you in any way? Remember, each of us has the power to make a difference, even with the smallest gestures. Sometimes, all it takes is a moment of kindness to change not just our lives, but the lives of many around us. Think about this. What small act of kindness can you perform today? Maybe it's a smile for a stranger, a word of encouragement for a colleague, or a few minutes of your time to help someone in need. You never know the impact your actions can have. And remember, like John, it's never too late to start over, to be the best version of yourself. Change begins with a small step, and that step can be taken today, right now. Thank you for following this narrative to the end. If it touched your heart, don't forget to leave your like, share with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this. Together, we can create a more compassionate and welcoming world, one act of kindness at a time. Until next time.